They say that the best comparison you can make of yourself against another driver is seeing how you both perform in the same machinery. Unfortunately for some, there have been times where two teammates would just be mismatches for one another. Just note that I'm not going to include teammate pairings that only lasted a brief period of time, like the Raikkonen and Balde pairing for example. There will be many mismatches that I do miss, as I am limiting the video to just 10 pairings, but I will make a part 2 for this topic in the coming weeks or months, so stay tuned and sit back as we go through some mismatches. Starting off with Ralf Schumacher and Alex Zanardi, who were Williams teammates in 1999. Although the two seemed to be rather competitive early on against one another, Schumacher would go on to produce a gulf between him and Zanardi, securing 3 podiums and 35 points, which was good for 6th in the standings. Compare this to Zanardi, who failed to score a single point for the season and was basically given a vote of no confidence for most of the season, as Zanardi was left with inferior resources around him. Although Zanardi was actually keeping up with Schumacher in quali at the beginning, the end of the season would only see him beat quicker in 2 of the final 9 quali sessions. Overall, I do think Zanardi was unlucky, considering he had 11 retirements for the season compared to Schumacher's 4, but it can't be denied that Schumacher was a class above and even more so on race day. On a side note, I do wish Zanardi the absolute best as he continues to recover from a horrible cycling accident. Next, Jochen Rind versus John Miles, and this was a mismatch from the absolute beginning when they were full-time teammates for the 1970 season at Lotus. An example of this was where Rind managed to win the Monaco Grand Prix, yet Miles failed to even qualify for the event. Jochen would end up claiming 5 race wins and the championship, scoring 45 points. Conversely, John Miles could only score 2 points, courtesy of a singular 5th place finish and never qualified above 7th, constantly seconds back from Rind. Unfortunately, there was to be a tragic ending at the Italian Grand Prix as Rind passed away after crashing hard into the barriers towards Parabolica. This was too much for Miles, who left the team as a result of the death. Rind, however, wasn't exactly fond of Miles, saying that he was too slow and was mystified by Miles' slow pace over the season. The teammate pairing of Emerson Fittipaldi and Dave Walker is probably one of the most one-sided pairings we'll ever see. In 1972, both Fittipaldi and Walker were full-time teammates at Lotus, and while Fittipaldi was a clear championship contender, Walker would be shockingly towards the back of the grid, with fitness being a major issue. Fittipaldi went on to win the championship, only failing to finish outside the podium places 4 times, 3 of them due to retirements, while Walker did not even score a single point. Absolutely bizarre. As a result of this, Dave Walker holds the unwanted record of being the only driver to never score a championship point the same season their teammate went on to win a championship, and it was no surprise that he was dropped at season's end. Mark Webber and Alex Jung were always going to be a mismatch, considering Webber's brilliant junior career and Jung never finishing above 11th overall in any category before Formula 1. Although the Minardi was a clear perennial backmarker in 2002, it didn't stop Webber from completely outclassing Jung, regularly outclassing the Malaysian driver by over a second in quali sessions and put in some inspiring drives, including that famous 5th place finish at Albert Park, scoring Minardi a crucial 2 points as they finished 9th in the Constructors. Additionally, Webber never failed to qualify for a race, which the same cannot be said for Jung. The Aussie was never outqualified either, and basically helped end Jung's F1 career. I should mention, however, due to budget constraints, that Webber's car was the only Minardi to have power steering, a big help for sure. Webber was picked up by Jaguar in 2003, where he would feature in another mismatch, this time with rookie Antonio Pizzonia, who had done well in the International Formula 3000 Championship until 4 retirements in the final 4 races derailed his campaign the previous year. The year was just about identical to 2002 for Webber, as he was never outqualified and never beaten on race day when both drivers finished, and this would be the same for when Justin Wilson replaced Pizzonia due to what Jaguar viewed as poor performance from the Brazilian. Webber again showed his class, regularly scoring points and ended up with 17 points compared to 0 from Pizzonia. It just seems like Webber just loved to put his teammates to shame early on in his career, and did not hold back on Pizzonia either, calling him a loser over comments the Brazilian made about Webber and Jaguar. Tonsena and Johnny Dunfrey start the second half of our mismatches. Dunfrey joined Senna at Lotus in 1986, and it wasn't like he was an unknown, having dominated in the British Formula 3 Championship 2 years earlier, but the whole season would be a nightmare for him. Senna qualified for pole 8 times, while Dunfrey only qualified in the top 10 twice for the season, and didn't even qualify for the Monaco Grand Prix, in which Senna qualified 3rd fastest in. Furthermore, Senna was mainly keeping up with the front runners, finishing 4th in the standings on 55 points. Compare this to Dunfrey, who was only 13th overall, scoring just the 3 points, with all 3 points scored in the second half of the season as his stint was riddled by mass retirements. This ruined Dunfrey so much that he would never race in F1 again after the 1986 season concluded. Senna features in this video again, this time against Michael Andretti, who joined Senna at McLaren in 1993 after having a highly successful period in the IndyCars. Andretti would do a better job than Dunfrey in attempting to match the legendary Brazilian, but he was still ultimately well off on the grand scheme of things. First off, he never beat Senna in a qualifying session. Andretti also made a lot of driver errors, which was a big factor in the high amount of retirements he had, and ultimately only beat Senna on track once when both cars went on to finish, and that one time was only due to Senna still being classified after pulling over. Andretti managed just the 7 points to be 11th overall before leaving the sport to return to IndyCars, whereas Senna finished the season as runner-up. Andretti did claim a podium in his final F1 race at Monza, but Senna scored 7 of these for the season, with 5 of them being for race victories. Andretti left before season's end to return to IndyCars, and while he may claim to have been on par with Senna in testing, the duo were definitely on different levels during the season. Sebastian Vettel and Sebastian Balde may have similar first names, but when they were teammates in the Toro Rosso for the 2008 season, the two were not so similar. Balde had actually gone off to the better start in 2008, drawing first blood by scoring points at Australia, and was even as high as 4th until engine trouble struck. However, he would only score points in one more occasion for the season. After Vettel's early struggles with frequent retirements, he would consistently score points, which of course was highlighted with that superb win at the Italian Grand Prix, in which he also impressively qualified on pole for as well. Vettel managed to accumulate 35 points and 8th in the standings, compared to Balde, who managed just the 4 and never beat Vettel in any race where both crossed the line. The quali count was more respectable, 13-5 in favour of Vettel, so I do think that Balde was actually okay in F1 overall before leaving in mid-2009. It's just that Seb, as we know, is an all-time talent. Nico Hulkenberg and Jollian Palmer is probably one of the more recent examples of a teammate mismatch, as Hulkenberg joined Renault in 2017 to pair up with Palmer. Unfortunately for Palmer, Hulkenberg was sensational, despite the Renault not being one of the upper midfield runners, scoring points on 8 occasions. 6 occasions where the two were teammates. This is compared to Palmer's singular points finish of 6th at Singapore, which to his credit was still a great outing, but Palmer would never beat Hulkenberg on a Saturday and was on average 7/10 of Hulkenberg's quali times. The Brit was ultimately replaced at the back end of the season by Carlos Sainz. At the time of Palmer's release, Hulkenberg was 10th on 34 points, compared to Palmer's 8 points, only good for 17th. The trio of Michael Schumacher, JJ Leto and Jos Verstappen is the final mismatch for this video. I will give Johnny Herbert a pass since he was only in the Benetton for the final 2 races of the season, but Leto and Verstappen were just dominated by Schumacher in 1994, who of course went on to win that season's championship with 92 points, claiming 7 victories in the process. Conversely, Leto scored just the 1 point in 8 races, and Verstappen 10 points in 10 races, which included 2 third-place finishes. Schumacher was dominant in qualifying too, never losing out to any of his teammates that season, and would regularly beat his teammate in these sessions by well over a second, just in a league of his own. To end the video, I just want to say that I know there were plenty more teammate mismatches over the 70 plus years we've had in F1, so comment below which other F1 teammates you think were a mismatch, and these may be included in the next video. Subscribe to the channel for more content and like the vid if you enjoyed it.